Palomera.
Carnahan.
Carnahan, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. We're recording there and we're recording there. Awesome. So I'll start us out. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of NAMI Maine Talks. My name is Ambrose Ward. I'm the marketing and media specialist here at NAMI Maine. I'm here today joined by the president and managing membership person for Eating Disorder Association of Maine. Guys, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Sarah Carnahan. I also go by Say, and I have been on the EDAM board for about 8 years now. This is my third year serving as president. I'm in LCSW. My day job is actually I work in college counseling, and I myself am an eating disorder survivor.
Thank you. Josh.
I'm Josh Palomera. I am a dietitian. I've been on the board for less than a year now, so I'm the newest. I work in the college setting as well. I work at Bates College.
Mm-hmm.
I also work for a private practice that specializes in eating disorders. And then through them, I contract with South Portland for their eating disorder program.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So I wanted to kind of start off this discussion today. If you guys could give us a brief history of your organization, how did it start and how has it grown over the years?
Sure. So it actually started sort of as a subset of a different organization. This would have been late 90s, early 2000s. The organization was called Mainly Girls, and the director of that, Mary O'Rear, was also really passionate about issues around body image and disordered eating and eating disorders. And so did eating disorders awareness and education through Mainly Girls. And then, as kind of awareness grew about how eating disorders impact people of all genders, and as specialists and providers, as that community also grew in the state of Maine, EDAM actually became its own organization in 2012 and has been operating as its own nonprofit since then.
That's awesome. So I was wondering, with this type of issue, this is something that's not really talked about in Maine that often. I was wondering, how do you guys expand your reach kind of across the state from Portland all the way up to Presque Isle?
That's a great question. So we definitely try to, on our board, make sure that we have some regional diversity in the state.
Yeah.
We also have a social media presence that obviously can reach everyone in Maine and beyond. And then we try to make sure that we are connecting to providers throughout the state. So we do have providers who are EDAM members throughout the state of Maine. We also hold events at different places in the state. So, for example, I was just down tabling. Actually, Josh and I were both down tabling as part of a wellness fair at USM last week. In September, we are going to be holding a conference. That one's going to be in Lewiston. So we really try to make our programming as accessible as possible to people throughout Maine.
Awesome. So I guess I'll ask Josh, if kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, but for our listeners, if they're interested in kind of getting involved in this type of work, or maybe even just kind of promoting the work that you guys do, how could they get involved with you guys?
I think there's a number of ways. So one would be, if you're interested in getting in this line of work, talking to someone who's in that line of work.
Yeah.
And maybe getting their perspective. The reality, it's hard work, right? It's mentally taxing.
Yeah.
But it is also very rewarding.
Yeah. Of course.
And needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's talking about eating disorders is tough.
Yeah.
I think some of the things that they can do without necessarily promoting eating disorder awareness could be not the way that they avoiding comments about people's bodies, their own bodies, not making comments such as like, "Oh, that's junk food," or that's bad food for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a leading by example, right? We're not demonizing or stigmatizing any a body or food.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think there's
And I'll just chime in there too. One way also to kind of spread awareness that is easy for people, especially without training, is to check out our social media. So
Yeah.
EDAM has an Instagram account and a Facebook account. So sharing both what is on our own social media, but then also seeing who we as an organization follow on social media
Yeah.
can also be a good way to make sure that you are following and sharing information from people and organizations that know how to talk about this without falling into those pitfalls that Josh mentioned.
Yeah.
Thank you, Say, for including the most important one.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of dive into this question. I myself has also wondered this for a while, but we have this discussion about eating disorders, but there's also disordered eating. I was wondering if you guys might be able to kind of clarify that.
Say, I'll let you this is your area of
Okay.
expertise.
So I think one of the best ways to clarify that is sort of look at how much it is impacting a person's functioning, right?
Okay.
So disordered eating, obviously that is going to impact a person's functioning as well in terms of how they're feeling in their body, levels of preoccupation, that sort of thing. When it moves into a full-blown eating disorder, you start seeing that impairment more regularly, more severely, and also in multiple areas of their life. So it's not just impacting, for example, their relationship with food or how they feel in their body. There can often be very significant health consequences. It will also start impairing things like their ability to function socially, their ability to function at work or school. The other big thing too that someone can sort of use to answer that question, like, is this disordered eating? Is this dieting behavior? Or is this an eating disorder? Is that when it has reached the point of an eating disorder, the person who is suffering with it really is not going to be able to control it or choose not to do it. So
Okay.
that's a big part of it, is that even if it is, having all of these severe consequences, the person with an eating disorder can't just choose to not do it because the illness is so strong. They typically need support to be able to make those changes.
Right. And I'll say, disordered eating is, in my line of work, I see it a lot. Right? And I don't exclusively work with eating disorders all the time, but dieting behavior, right? Just people going on diets that can be disordered and that snowballs, right? That can snowball into an eating disorder.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. I was wondering, I know that this probably is not a, one cause all and everything, but I was wondering, in your profession and what you guys have seen, how have you guys kind of seen these develop in people? How have people kind of gotten to the point of an eating disorder?
Do you want to take it or do you want me to start?
You can start. Okay.
So eating disorders are really biopsychosocial illnesses, right? So we know that there is a strong biological component and a strong genetic component. We know that neurochemistry is involved. And then there are also life circumstances and society that impact it. So one analogy that I often use that I really like is when it comes to eating disorders, biology shapes the gun, society or culture loads it, and unmanageable life stress pulls the trigger.
Okay. That's a very interesting statement.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Like she was saying, I often see someone who may have had a history with, they go to the doctor makes a comment, or someone makes a comment.
Yeah.
That in itself, is not necessarily enough. But then you add bullying or a traumatic event, right?
Yeah.
That happens, and sometimes that leads to initially not an eating disorder, right? But some of those disordered behaviors, which worsen over time.
Yeah. No, I think that's very, it's something that is difficult to talk about. And I know we'll get into this later in the podcast, but it can be very difficult to talk about. And sometimes it can be difficult to understand as well, especially if you're not the person struggling with it. But something that I had written down is eating disorders are kind of at this weird intersection between mental health and physical health, like what we were just talking about. It really encompasses every aspect of a person. And from what I've learned about eating disorders from looking at your website, it seems very much like a lot of these warning signs are very similar to what we have in mental health, like with our risk factors and things like that. And I know that with us, risk factors are things that put someone at risk to have a mental health crisis or poor mental health. And that can be anywhere from predisposed through genetics and family, or it can be social cultural impacts, like what we were talking about earlier. And I was wondering, would you guys classify eating disorders more as a physical health condition or a mental health condition?
Or mental health. Sorry.
Yeah.
Say can probably do a better job of
No, go ahead.
depending on it, but it's a mental health disorder,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And the behaviors lead to physical
Mhm.
dysfunction. But they're a mental health DSM-5 diagnosis, right? And so
Mhm.
a person can physically improve from an eating disorder and still very much have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Mental health, the mental health components and the psychological components of an eating disorder typically begin before the onset of like the physical illness associated with it
Yeah.
and last after the physical symptoms may be resolved.
Yeah.
I think one way I often like to describe it too is with an eating disorder, it really isn't about the food.
Yeah.
And just the same way that you wouldn't tell someone with depression to just stop being depressed.
Mhm.
Right? You don't tell someone with an eating disorder to just stop eating or right to change the food behavior.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I think that's a great point. And it actually works into what I wanted to talk about next. With mental health, it's very tough to open up about it and to talk about it. Find a person who would be comfortable with discussing mental health. It's something that in Maine especially we struggle with, where we have that kind of pride where it's like, well, I don't want to open up about it. I'm fine. You know what I mean? And I feel like with eating disorders, it can be kind of similar. Either people don't want to seek help, they don't know how to seek help, they don't know where to seek help from, or even their friends might be noticing it in someone else, but they don't know how to go and talk to that person about it. I was wondering, what is the best way for someone to open up that conversation, either for themselves or for someone that they love?
So for themselves, if there is a trusted person in your life that you can talk to about mental health, whether that is a friend, a family member, another mentor of some type, that can be a great way to start. If that is not available, definitely people can go to our website and look for resources and treatment providers.
Yeah.
We have a list of specialized providers throughout the state of Maine, so that way they know that they can reach out to and talk to someone who really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There are also some reputable online support groups and things like that, like through the Eating Disorder Foundation. I always just encourage people to make sure that they are, when using online resources like that, make sure that they are affiliated with a reputable eating disorder treatment center or nonprofit, because sometimes going online into, whether it's chats or discords or virtual groups, if they are just peer-led, you never know if they're going to be triggering more than recovery focused. And I think for people who are worried about someone, approaching them in a way where you actually are not talking about food and weight is often the best way to go, just because those topics can be so triggering for people with eating disorders. Even if it sounds like to you, you're expressing something about their health.
Yeah.
So trying to talk about other things, just like, I noticed you're not joining us for our like Friday night pizza nights, or you just seem a little tired lately, or like you're down, like focusing on those non-food and weight aspects.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's really important. Josh, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. Like she said, I think the more so focusing on the things that they're not doing is the best approach.
Yeah. No, and I think that's great. And I think you bring up a very good point about you want to make sure that it is from a reliable source. Because I think as great as it is for people to want to step up and help each other and create these communities online, it can be difficult to have this type of community, especially when it's something as serious as eating disorders, to be run by people who maybe don't have this type of training or don't have this experience. So I think that's very impactful. I was wondering if you guys could actually talk about some of the resources that you guys have available through the Eating Disorder Association of Maine.
So we do have our list of providers on our website. So it's maineatingdisorders.org. And that includes everything from outpatient providers who might be working in private practice to outpatient like private practice groups that specialize in treating eating disorders, all the way up to facilities that offer higher levels of care, both in the state of Maine and outside of the state of Maine. So that is a really good place to start to look for some of those resources.
Josh, do you have any special part of the website or any of the resources that you guys have that particularly speaks to you?
I don't know that I do. I mean, I think the way that the website is designed, it does help you. It leads you directly to the type of resources you might need. So, as she mentioned, if you need a treatment center, a higher level of care, right? You can check which are available. If you're looking for an individual outpatient provider, we have them categorized by dietitian, medical provider, mental health providers. So it's fairly straightforward and easy to navigate.
Yeah. And so Maine does not have that much of a focus on this type of issue. I was wondering, in the future, is there any hope that you guys have for people to kind of have awareness about this topic?
I'm seeing increased awareness already.
Oh, good.
Right, and it doesn't mean that it's a lot, but it's it's definitely improving over time. So there is some positive movement in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even thinking about the event that we were tabling at a week or two ago, just, we had more than one person come up to the table just to say, I'm so glad that you're here and that this is being talked about and that this is visible. And we are trying to increase the programming that we as an organization are doing. We're so happy to be here today. And then we do have our conference coming up in September. And that is not only geared toward professionals. It does offer training opportunities for professionals, but it also is going to include really helpful information for people who might be supporting someone in recovery. So also trying to really increase our programming and visibility. But I agree with Josh. I do think awareness is on the rise, which is great.
Yeah. One of the last things that I wanted to kind of talk about is, despite the lack of treatment centers, medical providers have knowledge about this, school staff have knowledge about this, where other than, I know obviously you guys have your website with your list of information, other than your website, do you guys have any spaces or any books or anything like that that you specifically point to for people to find resources?
That's a great question. And actually, one thing that I would point out is that actually a lot of doctors, a lot of school staff, and even a lot of mental health providers actually have little to no formal training in eating disorders. It is not, speaking as someone in the mental health field, it is actually not built into our education. So some books that I personally really like and recommend, there are 2 books by Amy Liu, her last name is spelled Liu, that both talk about her own experience with and recovery from an eating disorder. And what I really like about it is that you get her narrative also bolstered by a lot of really good research and empirical resources. Another book that people often find really helpful is called Life Without Ed by Jenny Schaefer. That does a good job of explaining sort of what is going on in the mind of someone with an eating disorder, what are like the thoughts and even like what we call the eating disorder voice that they're hearing and how to challenge it. So people often find that book really helpful as well. Josh, if you have ones you want to add.
Beyond the Shadow of a Diet by Judith Matz. And one book I often recommend to some of the clients I meet with is Sick Enough. And that one, I'm careful about who I recommend it to, but there's a really common theme of not being sick enough to have an eating disorder. And it really does a great job of highlighting all of the different ways an eating disorder can look, especially with a lot of the time people are really high functioning. So I do like that as a resource. It can be a little bit triggering for some because it talks about the medical consequences. Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison. That's another one.
And I would also recommend Christy Harrison's podcast, Food Psych. She does have a newer one too called Unlocking Wellness. I would especially recommend Food Psych. And there are hundreds of episodes available because it did run for years. She hosts all of them and there's a different guest each week. And that one is very specifically around issues of body image, disordered eating, practicing health at every size. The other thing I appreciate about it is that it is safe for people who are struggling to listen to because while she doesn't do things like bleep out swear words, she does do things like bleep out numbers or things like that can be triggering to people in recovery.
Interesting. I really like that.
Yeah.
And Josh, I really like what you brought up about not sick enough. I think that that's something that we see in mental health a lot too. When we have these discussions about mental health, someone may be dealing with the loss of a loved one or something like that. Something we hear all the time is, I never knew. And I think that we do a lot of times have these people who are just very high functioning and can unfortunately hide it very well. So I think that's a really good resource that you brought up. Some of the other resources I wanted to mention, we also have the National Eating Disorder Association, NEDA. They have a lot of information about just what are eating disorders. Some of the statistics they have are national statistics. And they also have information on seeking help for yourself or others.
There's, for those, for families who have those with eating disorders, Feast is a really helpful website. I honestly forget what the acronym entirely stands for, but feast.org.
And can you describe a little bit about that?
So there's resources for how to approach family-based treatment, right? Or what types of meals might work, what type of behavior to engage in and not engage in, right? So and there's also just blogs or families can talk to other families.
That's great.
So there's a nice peer support network there.
No, that's great. And I know I keep saying that it relates back to mental health, but something that I've talked about on a few podcasts, I think I mentioned it in the last one that we recorded, but with eating disorders and mental health, very much viewed upon differently among generations. My generation and younger generations, this can be something that is very important, very prioritized, not only within like themselves, but within their friend groups and within the culture. Eating disorders are something that most people know someone who has struggled with it before, so they know the importance of talking about something like this. Whereas with some of the older generations, they might not understand much about the importance of talking about it or really how it develops or what it is. So yeah. So I wanted to thank you guys both for coming on this podcast and explaining the importance of this and talking about your organization.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, of course. Before we start to wrap up, I wanted to say, for those listening, you can always reach NAMI Maine at our helpline listed on the screen right now. And we also have our calendar of events for upcoming trainings and events that we have that might be in an area near you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.